You woke up this morning. You had a list. You had energy. Or at least you told yourself you did. And somewhere between the first task and the third meeting, something quietly gave out. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just less. Less focus. Less care. Less you. That feeling has a name. And it is more common, more biological, and more fixable than most people think. Think about the life most people are living right now. You wake up already behind. Your phone has been working while you were asleep. Notifications, messages, deadlines. The day starts with a deficit before you have even had a cup of water. Then comes the performance. At work, you are expected to be sharp, collaborative, creative, efficient, and available, all at the same time, often all day long. At home, there are different people with different needs waiting for different versions of you. And in the gaps between all of that, you are supposed to be developing yourself, staying healthy, maintaining relationships, and somehow still finding meaning in the middle of it. Most people do not collapse from one enormous pressure. They erode quietly under the weight of 100 ordinary ones. And then one day, the thing they used to care about deeply feels completely hollow. That is not laziness. That is not weakness. That is a system that has been running without enough recovery for too long. Let's talk about what is actually happening inside the brain during all of this. Just behind your forehead sits a region called the prefrontal cortex. It is the most evolutionarily recent part of the human brain. The part that separates us from almost every other species on the planet. What does it do? Plans. It focuses. It shifts your attention from one problem to another. It weighs options, controls impulses, builds strategies, and helps you work with other people toward shared goals. Every time you make a complex decision, every time you stop yourself from saying the wrong thing in a meeting, every time you sit down to do focused work, that region is doing heavy lifting. Here is the problem. It has a weak battery. The prefrontal cortex consumes enormous amounts of energy relative to its size. Think of it like a high-performance engine in a sports car. It generates power, but it also generates waste, and it burns through fuel fast. Unlike a car, though, most people never stop to refuel. They just keep pushing, expecting the same output, wondering why the performance keeps dropping. And it does drop. Measurably, noticeably, scientifically. Research consistently shows that decision quality, attention capacity, and creative output all decline significantly as cognitive fatigue accumulates across the day. The brain does not stay at peak performance indefinitely. It degrades. And it takes everything, your work, your relationships, and your sense of self with it when it does. So what is the solution? Most people assume the answer is discipline. Push through. Work harder. Sleep less if necessary. That is almost exactly wrong. One of the most counterintuitive findings in modern neuroscience is that the resting brain is not an idle brain. When you stop focusing, when you let your mind drift without direction, sit quietly without a task, take a short nap or a slow walk, your brain shifts into a different mode entirely. Neuroscientists call this the default mode network. And when brain scans were done on people who were doing nothing, just resting, not thinking about anything in particular, something unexpected showed up. More regions of the brain were active than during focused work. Not fewer. More. What is the brain doing during rest? It is consolidating memory. It is making connections between ideas that were too far apart to reach during active focus. It is essentially running its own internal maintenance program, clearing metabolic waste, pruning unnecessary connections, strengthening the ones that matter, and reorganizing information in ways that prepare the mind for what comes next. This is why the solution to the problem you have been stuck on for 3 days sometimes appears while you are in the shower. It is not coincidence. It is the default mode network doing the work you could not force through direct effort. The brain was solving it the whole time. It just needed you to stop interfering. So rest is not the opposite of productivity. Rest is part of the biological infrastructure that makes productivity possible. When you skip it consistently, you are not gaining time. You are borrowing against a debt the brain will eventually collect with interest. Let's move beyond biology for a moment and talk about something psychological. Something that sounds soft but is actually one of the most strategically important skills a person can develop. Acceptance. When most people hear that word, they immediately think of passivity, of giving up, of admitting defeat. That is a misunderstanding that costs people a great deal. Acceptance, in the psychological sense, means something very specific. It means seeing the actual dimensions of your situation clearly, without distortion in either direction. Without minimizing what is genuinely difficult. Without catastrophizing what is manageable. Here is why that matters for burnout. A significant portion of mental exhaustion comes not from the difficulty of reality, but from the ongoing effort of fighting it. When something is not going the way we want, many people do not adjust. They escalate. They push harder against the same wall. They refuse to acknowledge that the approach is not working. They spend enormous psychological energy maintaining a picture of how things should be, rather than responding to how things actually are. That resistance is exhausting, and it produces nothing. Acceptance short-circuits that cycle. It does not mean you stop caring about the outcome. It means you stop spending resources on denial. Once you see the situation clearly, you can respond to it. And responding to reality is almost always more effective than fighting it. Now let's talk about patience, because this word is used constantly and understood almost never. Most people treat patience as something passive, a kind of gritted teeth endurance. You tolerate the difficulty. You wait for it to be over. You survive. That is not patience. That is just suffering. Real patience is active. It is the discipline of continuing to move with method, with clarity, and with consistent effort even when the environment is working against you. It is what allows a person to stay on course when results are invisible, when progress is slow, when the external conditions are not cooperating. The outer world almost never arranges itself to match our timelines. Projects take longer than planned. Relationships require more investment than expected. Skills develop at their own pace regardless of how urgently we need them. Careers move in unexpected directions. A person who understands patience does not fight this. They build systems, maintain habits, and trust that deliberate effort over time produces results that urgency alone cannot manufacture. Burnout often peaks in people who are working hard but working without patience, who expect rapid results and interpret delay as failure, who respond to every obstacle by adding more force rather than more intelligence. Patience is not waiting for things to get better. It is continuing to act well while they do. Here is something that does not get enough attention. Motivation is not a character trait. It is a biological loop. The brain has a reward system, a set of circuits that release dopamine when effort leads to a positive outcome. That dopamine does not just feel good. It signals to the brain, this behavior was worth it. Do it again. Keep going. That loop is what sustains effort over time. Now here is what most high-performing people do to that loop. They destroy it. Not on purpose, but by never pausing long enough to register success before moving to the next target, they starve the reward system. The brain keeps producing effort, but the loop never closes. No dopamine. No signal. No reinforcement. Over time, the system interprets this as effort leads nowhere, and it starts to resist. That resistance is what you experience as lack of motivation. The fix is not complicated, but it does require a deliberate change in behavior. You have to let yourself feel your wins. Not fake wins. Not manufactured positivity. Just honest acknowledgement that something was completed, something was done well, something was worth doing. Whether that is a project delivered or a difficult conversation handled or 3 days of a new habit maintained, let it register. Sit with it for a moment. Let the loop close. This is not indulgence. This is basic maintenance of the system that keeps you going. We started with a picture of a person waking up already exhausted, already behind, already spending energy they do not have on a day that will demand more than they can give. That picture is real. For a lot of people, it is not occasional. It is the default state. But here is what that picture does not show. It does not show that the same brain running on empty right now is also capable of extraordinary recovery, when given the conditions it actually needs. It does not show that the prefrontal cortex that is currently struggling to focus can rebuild its capacity in days, sometimes hours, with the right kind of rest. It does not show that the motivation that has gone quiet is not gone. It is waiting for a signal that has not been sent. And it does not show the last piece of this, the one that gets lost most easily in a world organized around individual performance. Other people. Human beings are not built for isolation. We evolved in groups where shared burden was survival. The support of other people, not digital performance of support, but real presence, real honesty, real reciprocity, is one of the most powerful biological buffers against burnout that exists. Talking to someone who actually knows you, letting someone help, helping someone else, being seen in difficulty without having to pretend it is fine. These are not soft extras. They are structural necessities. Burnout does not happen only because you work too hard. It happens because you worked too hard, recovered too little, ignored your own signals, resisted reality, rushed past your wins, and tried to carry everything without enough support. That is a system problem, and systems can be redesigned. So let's make this concrete. The brain needs deliberate rest, not eventually, not on weekends if time allows, but built into the structure of how you work and live. Acceptance of reality is not weakness. It is the starting point of every intelligent response. Patience is action sustained over time, not waiting, but continuing. Your reward system needs you to stop and feel your progress, or it will stop generating the motivation to continue. And you need other people, real ones, not curated ones. None of this is complicated. All of it is hard in a world designed to keep you moving faster. But you were not designed to run forever without stopping. And the version of you that has been pushing through without enough rest, without enough acknowledgement, without enough support, that version deserves better than this. Start there.